Me and Laura, that's my wife. We've been married for 6 years, together for 8. I thought we were the real deal. The couple everyone else looked at and said, yeah, that's what I want. We had our routines, our inside jokes, the kind of comfortable silence that only comes from knowing someone inside and out. Or so I thought. The last few months, things started to feel off. It wasn't one big thing, just a bunch of little paper cuts that you ignore until you're bleeding all over the place. She started guarding her phone like it was the goddamn Hope Diamond. It was always face down on the counter, and she'd snatch it up if I even walked near it. When I asked her about it, she'd just snap. Jesus, can't I have some privacy? I'm texting with my sister. You don't need to read every word. It was the way she said it, all teeth and claws, like a cornered animal. That wasn't my Laura. Then came the late nights at work. Suddenly, her marketing job, which had been a standard 9 to 5 for years, required her to stay until 9 or 10 p.m. multiple times a week. I'd try to bring her dinner, and I'd get a frantic text. Don't. We're in the middle of a huge project. I'll just grab something. She was always tired, always stressed, and our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? Don't forget to take out the trash. The warmth was gone. It felt like I was living with a roommate, and a pretty bitchy one at that. I tried to talk to her about it, to ask if she was okay, but it was like talking to a brick wall. A very angry, defensive brick wall. I just figured it was work stress, and I tried to be a good husband and give her space. God, I was such a fool. The breaking point came last Tuesday. It was one of those rare nights where she was actually home at a reasonable hour. She claimed she had a migraine and went to bed early, leaving her laptop on the coffee table. We have one of those family sharing plans for our devices, something we set up years ago and forgot about. Her iMessages are linked to the laptop. I've never once looked at them. Honestly, the thought never even crossed my mind. I was just tidying up, about to close the laptop, when the screen lit up with a new message notification. It wasn't the content of the message that made my blood run cold, but the name of the sender, Mark Work. That's it. Just Mark Work. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Why would a coworker's contact be so generic? It felt deliberately anonymous. I know. I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't stop myself. It felt like my body was moving on its own. I clicked on the notification, and the world just ended. My world, anyway. It wasn't one message. It was months of them. Hundreds. Thousands. Messages about their meetings after work. Explicit photos. Things I could never unsee. While graphic descriptions of what they did in hotel rooms, in his car, even in our house on our bed while I was on a business trip last month. They made jokes about me, about how clueless I was, how I was a good provider, but boring. He called her his firecracker, and she called him her escape. Every message was a dagger. I scrolled and scrolled, feeling the life drain out of me, replaced by something cold and heavy. I felt like I was going to be sick right there on the living room rug. The woman I loved, the life I had built, it was all a lie. A sick, twisted joke, and I was the punchline. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, just staring at the screen. It could have been minutes or hours. The whole world had narrowed down to the glowing rectangle of the laptop, each message a fresh wave of nausea and white-hot rage. I felt hollowed out, a shell. I took screenshots of everything, sent them to my email, my phone. I needed proof. I felt like I was going crazy, and I needed to know this was real. I didn't sleep. I just sat on the couch in the dark, the laptop open on the coffee table, waiting. The sun came up. I heard the shower turn on upstairs, heard her moving around, getting ready for work as if it were just another normal day. The casualness of it, the sheer audacity, made my blood boil. She came downstairs, humming some tune, dressed for the office. She stopped dead when she saw me, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Hey, you're up early," she said, her voice a little too bright. Then she saw the laptop. The smile vanished. Her eyes darted from my face to the screen, and I saw a flicker of pure panic. "What's that?" I asked. My voice sounded alien to my own ears. It was flat, dead. She walked over, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She glanced at the open message thread. What the hell? Had you been going through my computer? That is a massive invasion of my privacy. The immediate, indignant anger was stunning. No guilt, no fear, just fury that she'd been caught. Answer the question, Laura. Who is Mark Work? She scoffed, crossing her arms. He's just a guy from work, obviously. You're being insane. This is nothing. Nothing. I stood up, my whole body trembling. I read it all, Laura. The hotels. The jokes about me. Our bed. Our bed? How could you? For a second, the mask slipped. I saw real fear. Then it was gone, replaced by an even colder fury. You know what? I'm not doing this, she spat, grabbing her purse. You're paranoid and controlling. I have to get to work. She didn't deny it. She didn't explain. She just attacked. She turned and walked to the door, and as she left, she threw one last thing over her shoulder. This is your fault. Then she was gone, leaving me standing alone in the ruins of our life. The sound of her car pulling out of the driveway was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. And then silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that filled up every corner of the house. For a minute, I just stood there in the living room, unable to move, my mind a complete blank. It was like my brain just shut down to protect itself. Then the last thing she said hit me again. This is your fault. My fault? The sheer, unmitigated gall of that statement broke through the numbness, and a wave of pure, unadulterated rage washed over me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch a hole in the wall. I wanted to smash that laptop into a million pieces. I actually picked it up, my hands shaking with fury, but then I stopped. It was my only evidence. The only thing proving I wasn't the paranoid and controlling psycho she tried to paint me as. So I put it down and just started walking. I paced the house like a caged animal, from the living room to the kitchen, up the stairs and back down. Every object I looked at felt tainted. The wedding photos on the mantelpiece felt like a mockery. The couch we'd picked out together, where we'd cuddled and watched countless movies, now just felt like a piece of furniture. I walked into our bedroom, and the smell of her perfume hung in the air, making me want to gag. I looked at our bed, and the images from those texts flooded my mind. I had to get out. I couldn't breathe in there. The rage started to curdle into something else, something heavier. A deep, gut-wrenching sadness that settled in my chest like a block of ice. I stumbled back downstairs, collapsed onto the couch, and just broke. I put my head in my hands and sobbed. Not quiet tears, but ugly, heaving sobs that tore out of my throat. I cried for the man I was yesterday, who thought his life was perfect. I cried for the love I thought we had. I cried because I was completely and utterly alone. After the tears stopped, I just felt empty. A hollowed-out cavern where my heart used to be. I sat there on the couch for what must have been an hour, just staring at the grain of the wooden floor, replaying her words, her lies, the casual cruelty in those texts. The thought of her coming back home, of trying to pretend things were normal, was unbearable. I couldn't be here when she got back. I couldn't look at her face. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a text from her. Can we please talk tonight? I'm sorry for how I acted. Not, I'm sorry for cheating, but I'm sorry for how I acted. The distinction was everything. It was a non-apology, a classic Laura move. It was all about managing the situation, not about remorse. That text was the slap in the face I needed to actually do something. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over my parents, my brother, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them yet. Saying it out loud to them would make it too real. I called my best friend, Mike. He picked up on the second ring. Hey man, what's up? He said, his voice cheerful. I opened my mouth to speak, but all that came out was a choked sob. I had to take a few deep breaths before I could get the words out. Mike, Laura's cheating on me. I told him everything. The phone, the texts, the confrontation. He was quiet the whole time, just letting me talk. When I was done, his voice was low and furious. That line, where are you now? He asked. You can't stay there. Pack a bag. You're coming to my place. Right now. His decisiveness cut through my fog. He was right. I had a mission. I went upstairs, walking past our bedroom without looking in, and went straight to the guest room closet. I pulled out a duffel bag and just started stuffing it with clothes. I wasn't thinking, just moving. T-shirts, socks, jeans, my toothbrush. As I was zipping up the bag, I heard the front door open downstairs. My heart dropped into my stomach. She was home. Babe, she called out, her voice laced with fake concern. I left work early. I was so worried. We need to talk this out. I walked out of the guest room and met her at the top of the stairs. I had the duffel bag in my hand. The sight of it stopped her cold. Her face crumpled, and for a second, I thought I saw real pain. Then she started crying. No, no, please don't, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. It was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. It means nothing to me, I swear. I love you. I just stared at her, my face like stone. The performance was good, I'll give her that. But I'd spent the morning reading the script. I knew my lines. I read the messages, Laura, I said, my voice flat. The ones where you said you wished you could be with him. The ones where you laughed about me. Her tears stopped instantly. The mask was back in place. So what? She snapped, her voice turning venomous. You think you're perfect? You think I was happy? You're never here. You're always working or tired or just gone. I was lonely. There was again. This is your fault. I didn't say another word. I walked down the stairs, brushed right past her, and walked out the front door. I didn't look back. The drive to Mike's place is a blur. I remember the feeling of the car door slamming shut, the engine turning over, but the 10-minute drive felt like a lifetime and also like no time at all. I was on autopilot. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and I kept replaying that final moment on the stairs. Her face twisted with rage, spitting those words at me. I was lonely, as if that was some kind of get-out-of-jail-free card for destroying our marriage. As if her loneliness was a weapon she could use to wound me, to make her betrayal my burden to carry. I pulled up to Mike's house and just sat in the car for a minute, the engine still running. The thought of getting out, of walking up to his door and admitting that my life was a complete dumpster fire was paralyzing. This was it, the moment it became irreversible. Leaving the house was one thing, but seeking refuge somewhere else? That was crossing the Rubicon. My phone started buzzing relentlessly in my pocket. I knew it was her, a string of texts and missed calls. I pulled it out and saw the previews on the lock screen. Please come back. We can fix this. Don't throw this all away. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. The messages were a chaotic mix of begging and blaming. It was dizzying. I turned the phone off. I couldn't handle it. Mike must have seen my car pull up because the front door opened and he came jogging down the steps. He didn't say anything, just opened my car door, put a hand on my shoulder, and looked at me with a kind of grim understanding. Come on, man. Let's get you inside. He took my duffel bag, and I followed him into his house. His wife, Sarah, was waiting in the kitchen. She just came over and gave me a hug. No questions, no pity, just a simple, warm hug that almost made me break down again. Mike poured me a glass of water, which I drank without even realizing I was thirsty. They sat with me at their kitchen table while I just stared into space, the silence broken only by the hum of their refrigerator. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I wasn't in a space that was tainted by her. I was safe, but I was also completely, terrifyingly adrift. I spent the first few hours at Mike and Sarah's in a daze. They were incredible. They didn't push me to talk. Sarah made some sandwiches that I didn't eat, and Mike put the game on TV with the volume low, just to have some background noise. It was a small bubble of normalcy in the middle of my world imploding. We just sat there, the three of us in their comfortable living room, and for the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe without a weight on my chest. Around dinner time, Mike broke the silence. So what's the plan, man? You can stay here as long as you need, you know that. But what's your next step? I looked up from the spot on the rug I'd been staring at for the last hour. I don't know, I said, but my voice was hoarse. I haven't thought that far ahead. I just knew I couldn't be in that house. You need to protect yourself, Sarah said gently, but with a firmness in her voice. She's already trying to twist it, make it your fault. You need to talk to someone. A lawyer. A lawyer. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. It was one thing to leave the house, another to call a lawyer. That was the official declaration of war. That was the point of no return. A part of me, a small, stupid, sentimental part, still recoiled at the idea. It felt so cold, so clinical. This was my wife, the woman I had vowed to love and cherish. Now I was supposed to hire a stranger to fight her? But then I thought about her face, contorted with rage, screaming at me that I was to blame. I thought about the months of lies, the calculated deception. I thought about Mark work. The sentimental part of me shriveled up and died. You're right, I said, my voice clearer now. She'll try to spin this, say I abandoned her. I need to get ahead of it. I pulled out my phone and turned it back on. It immediately lit up with a barrage of notifications. I ignored them all and opened a web browser. I typed "divorce lawyer near me" into the search bar. My hand was shaking again, but I hit enter. The screen filled with names and phone numbers. It was real. This was happening. I was officially dismantling my own life. I stared at the list of names on my phone screen. They all looked the same. Family law, divorce specialist. It felt like I was shopping for a new appliance, not a person to help me blow up my life. I just picked the first one with a decent-looking website and a non-stock photo of a stern-looking woman in a power suit. My finger hovered over the call button for a full minute before I finally pressed it. A receptionist answered, her voice professionally cheerful. Harris Law, how can I help you? Hi. I stammered, feeling like an idiot. I think I need to speak to a lawyer about a divorce. Saying the word out loud to a stranger felt like swallowing glass. She didn't miss a beat. Of course. Let me get some information from you. She took my name and number and then asked a few basic questions. Are there children involved? No, I said, a wave of relief washing over me for that small mercy. Has your spouse been served? No, I just found out. My voice cracked on the last few words. The receptionist's tone softened slightly. Okay, listen. I'm going to have Ms. Harris call you back within the hour. In the meantime, do not engage with your spouse. Do not respond to texts or calls. Do not agree to meet her. Write down everything you remember about finding out and secure any evidence you have. Do you understand? Yes, I whispered. Thank you. After I hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had a directive, a mission. It was better than the free-floating panic I'd been drowning in. Following the receptionist's advice, I spent the next 30 minutes writing down a timeline of everything, my hands shaking less now, replaced by a cold, methodical focus. Then, all hell broke loose. A car screeched to a halt outside Mike's house, and, a second later, someone was pounding on the front door. It was Laura. I know you're in there. You coward, she shrieked, her voice audible through the door. You can't just run away. Open the door. We need to talk. Mike shot me a look and went to the door. I could hear him talking to her in a low, firm voice. Laura, you need to leave. He doesn't want to see you right now. This is between me and my husband, she screamed back. You have no right to keep him from me. The pounding started again, harder this time. I was frozen, listening to the woman I married have a complete meltdown on my best friend's front porch. This wasn't the woman I knew. Or maybe it was, and I'd just been too blind to see it. The pounding on the door was relentless. I could hear Mike trying to reason with her, his voice staying calm, while hers just got higher and more hysterical. I'm not leaving until I talk to him. He's my husband, she shrieked. Then I heard a thud, like she was kicking the door. Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide. Should we call the cops? She whispered. Before I could answer, Mike came back into the living room, his face grim. She's losing it out there, crying 1 second, screaming the next. She's trying to get the neighbors' attention. As if on cue, we heard her yell, he locked me out. He's in there. Someone help me. My blood ran cold. She was trying to flip the script to paint herself as the victim. The wronged wife locked out of her home by her cruel husband. It was manipulative, it was insane, and it was pure Laura. My phone buzzed. It was the lawyer, Ms. Harris. Is this a bad time? She asked. Her voice was calm and professional, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting outside. You have no idea, I said, my voice trembling. She's here. She's outside my friend's house, screaming and pounding on the door. Okay, Ms. Harris said, her tone sharpening. Do not engage. Do not speak to her. Is your friend handling it? He's trying. Good. Let him. She's creating a public disturbance. Someone will call the police. That's good for us. It documents her instability. Just stay put and stay quiet. It was the strangest feeling, sitting there on Mike's couch, listening to my wife's frantic screams while a lawyer calmly gave me strategic advice. It felt like my life was a movie, and I was just watching it unfold. The pounding stopped. A new sound replaced it. Sirens. They grew louder and louder until red and blue lights were flashing through the living room windows. A neighbor had called the police. I watched through the blinds as two officers got out of their car and approached Laura. The show was over. I watched through the gap in the blinds, my heart pounding in time with the flashing police lights. The moment the two officers approached Laura, her entire demeanor shifted. The hysterical, screaming banshee vanished, and in her place was a distraught, weeping victim. She put her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking with what looked like genuine sobs. It was a masterful performance. She started talking to them, gesturing wildly back at Mike's front door. I couldn't hear the words, but I could imagine them. My husband, he just left. He won't talk to me. His friend is keeping him from me. I'm so worried. She was playing the part to perfection. One of the officers, a woman, put a comforting hand on her arm while the other, a tall man with a mustache, walked up to the front door. Mike opened it before the officer could knock. I moved back from the window, my breath caught in my throat. I could hear their conversation more clearly. Mike was calm, explaining that I was his guest, that I had left my home voluntarily, and that my wife had shown up uninvited and was causing a disturbance. The officer listened patiently, then asked, "Is he willing to come out and speak with her?" "Absolutely not," Mike said, his voice firm. "She's been harassing him all day. He's safe here, and he doesn't want any contact. We were about to call you ourselves." The officer nodded, then went back to talk to his partner and Laura. The three of them spoke for a few more minutes. I saw Laura's face change from tear-streaked victim to indignant fury as she realized they weren't taking her side. She started arguing, her voice getting louder again. The male officer held up a hand, cutting her off. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Laura threw her hands up in disgust. She shot a look of pure hatred at the house, a look that I felt even through the walls and the glass. Then she stomped back to her car, slammed the door, and peeled out down the street, tires squealing in protest. The officers watched her go, then had a final, brief word with Mike before getting back in their car and driving away. The flashing lights disappeared, plunging the street back into darkness and silence. The show was finally over. Ms. Harris's words echoed in my head. It documents her instability. I felt a cold, grim sense of vindication. But it wasn't a victory. It was just sad. I had just watched my wife, the woman I had loved and built a life with, have a screaming meltdown on a suburban street, culminating in a police visit. There was no going back from this. This was the definitive, ugly end. When the last of the flashing lights vanished down the street, the silence that fell was heavier than before. It was a dead, sterile silence, the kind that comes after a storm has passed, leaving wreckage in its wake. Mike locked the front door and came back into the living room, letting out a long, slow breath. "Well," he said, running a hand through his hair. "That was something." Sarah just shook her head, looking at me with concern. "Are you okay?" Was I okay? It felt like a ridiculous question. I was a man whose life had been a lie, whose wife had just put on a one-act play for the local police department on his best friend's lawn. "No," I said, the word feeling small and inadequate. "But I think I'm done being sad about it. Now I'm just, I don't know, scared? Angry? It's all a blur." My phone, sitting on a coffee table, buzzed to life. It was Ms. Harris again. I picked it up, my hand feeling steadier this time. "I saw the police report come through the local blotter," she said, her voice all business. "Public disturbance. They noted she was the aggressor, and you refused contact. This is good. This establishes a pattern." Hearing my life's catastrophe described as good and a pattern was jarring, but I understood what she meant. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was about facts and evidence. "So what now?" I asked. "Now we file," she said decisively. "First thing in the morning. We file the petition for dissolution of marriage. We also file for a temporary restraining order, citing tonight's events and the evidence of harassment. It will grant you temporary exclusive use of the house and order her to have no contact with you. It's time to stop reacting and start acting. Do I have your permission to proceed?" There was no hesitation. The man who had cried on the couch that morning was gone. The man who had flinched at the word lawyer was gone. Laura had killed them both. Her lies, her betrayal, and finally, Her unhinged performance on the front lawn had burned away any last shred of doubt or sentimentality. She wasn't just a cheater. She was unstable and willing to do anything to control the narrative. Yes, I said, my voice cold and clear. Do it. File everything. Good, she replied. I'll be in touch tomorrow with the next steps. For tonight, stay put. Don't answer your phone. Don't leave your friend's house. I hung up and looked at Mike and Sarah. It's done, I told them. We're filing for divorce and a restraining order. The finality of the words hung in the air. This wasn't a separation anymore. This was a war, and I had just fired the first official shot. I woke up on Mike and Sarah's couch with a jolt, my neck stiff and my head pounding. For a blissful, stupid second, I didn't know where I was. Then the events of the previous day came crashing back down on me like a physical weight. The texts, the confrontation, the meltdown on the lawn. It was all real. I sat up and grabbed my phone. I'd turned it on silent before falling into a restless sleep. The screen lit up with 47 new text messages and 19 missed calls. A few were from Laura, oscillating between, I love you, please come home, and you're a monster for doing this to me. But most were from other people. Her mom, I don't know what you did to my daughter, but she is completely broken. You should be ashamed. Our mutual friend, Jessica, dude, what is going on? Laura said you just packed a bag and left her with no explanation. She had spent the night working the phones, painting herself as the abandoned wife, the victim of my sudden, inexplicable cruelty. She was salting the earth so nothing could ever grow back. Just as I was about to throw the phone across the room, a new email popped up. The sender was Ms. Harris. The subject line was Case Filing Confirmation. My stomach clenched. I opened it. It was brief and to the point. The petition for divorce had been filed. The request for the temporary restraining order was in front of a judge. A process server had been dispatched to serve Laura with the papers at her office. This was it. The machinery was in motion. I knew I had to go back to the house. I needed my work laptop, my passport, important document from the filing cabinet. I couldn't just live out of a duffel bag at my friend's place. I called Ms. Harris's office, and she was blunt. You will not go alone. Call the non-emergency police line and request a civil standby. An officer will meet you there and supervise to prevent any breach of the peace. Get in, get your essentials, and get out. Do not engage with her, even if she is there. An hour later, I was standing on my own front porch, a uniformed police officer standing a few feet behind me. It was the most surreal moment of my life. I was a visitor in my own home, needing a police escort to retrieve my belongings. I put my key in the lock and turned it. The door swung open. The house was silent. She wasn't there, but her presence was everywhere. The first thing I saw was our wedding portrait, which usually hung in the entryway, now lying face down on the floor, the glass shattered. It was such a cliché, such a dramatic, childish gesture that I almost laughed. I walked through the house, the officer following at a respectful distance. I moved quickly, methodically, like a thief. I grabbed my laptop, a stack of mail, the folder of personal documents from the office. I went into the bedroom and pulled more clothes from the closet, avoiding looking at the bed. As I was leaving, I saw it on our nightstand. A framed photo of the two of us, taken on our honeymoon. She hadn't smashed that one. She had just turned my face to the wall. I got back to Mike and Sarah's place with my meager collection of belongings and a profound sense of emptiness. The officer had been professional and detached, but his presence was a constant reminder of how far my life had fallen. I dumped my stuff in the guest room and spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog, aimlessly scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the gaping hole in my life. Around 3 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. It was the process server. Mr. Thompson, he asked, his voice gruff. Just wanted to confirm that your wife, Laura Thompson, was served at 2:45 p.m. at her place of employment. Okay, I said, my mouth suddenly dry. How did it go? He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. She made a scene, cried, yelled, accused me of harassing her, said it was all a mistake, and you were being manipulated. Pretty standard stuff. The papers were delivered. My job is done. I hung up the phone and just sat there. It was done. She knew. She had the papers in her hand. The divorce was no longer a threat or a concept. It was a stack of legal documents with her name on it. I imagine her in her office, the epicenter of her secret life, having the truth of our ending delivered to her in front of her colleagues. In front of Mark Work. A small, ugly part of me felt a grim satisfaction at the thought. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from Ms. Harris. The judge had approved the temporary restraining order. It was effective immediately. Laura was legally ordered to stay away from me, to not contact me, and to vacate our home within 24 hours, taking only personal necessities until a further court date. I had temporary exclusive use of the house. I had won. I had gotten everything I asked for. I was safe, I had the house, and the legal wheels were turning in my favor. But as I sat there in the quiet of Mike's guest room, I didn't feel like a winner. I just felt broken. I had won a battle, but I had lost my life. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a prize in a legal battle. The silence I'd craved was now a roaring emptiness. I had my safety, but I had lost my past, my present, and the future I thought I was building. The next day, I drove back to the house. Mike offered to come with me, but I told him I needed to do it alone. It felt like walking back to the scene of crime. My crime scene. My life. The restraining order gave Laura 24 hours to get her things and leave. I'd given her 26 just to be safe. The key felt heavy in my hand. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the silence. It was different from the silence when I'd been here with a police officer. That was a temporary, tense silence. This was a deep, hollow, permanent silence. It was the sound of absence. She had been here. Her presence was gone, but the evidence of her departure was everywhere. The smashed wedding photo in the entryway was gone, probably swept up, but there were other, pettier wounds. Gaps on the bookshelves where her favorite novels used to be. The expensive espresso machine we bought together on a trip to Italy was gone from the kitchen counter. In the living room, she'd taken the throw blanket I always used when I watched TV. Small, spiteful little cuts. I walked upstairs, my footsteps echoing unervingly through the empty house. I braced myself for the bedroom. She'd taken her clothes, her shoes, her makeup. The closet was half empty, a sad, cavernous space. Her side of the bathroom counter was wiped clean, sterile, and anonymous. It was like she had been surgically removed from the life we'd shared, and the scars were still raw and bleeding. Then I saw what she'd left on my pillow. It wasn't a note. It was a single, expensive-looking earring. A man's earring. A small, silver hoop. I'd never seen it before in my life. It wasn't mine. It was a final parting shot. A piece of him, left in our bed for me to find. It was so calculated, so venomous, that I didn't even feel anger. I just felt a profound, weary sadness. This is who she was. This cruel, petty stranger. I picked it up with a tissue, walked back downstairs, and dropped in the trash. I spent the rest of the day just walking through the rooms, touching things, trying to reconcile the memories I had with the empty reality in front of me. This house was my kingdom now, but it was a kingdom of ghosts and memories. That night, I slept in the guest room. I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our bed. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It's been 3 months since D-Day, Discovery Day, as I've come to call it. The house is still quiet, but it's no longer a suffocating, hollow silence. It's just my silence. My space. I've slowly started to reclaim it. I painted the bedroom a new color. I bought a new couch. I gave away all the little things that screamed us and replaced them with things that are just me. It's a slow process, but it's progress. The divorce is moving forward. It's ugly and expensive. Laura, through her lawyer, has tried to claim everything. She's painted me as abusive, controlling, and mentally unstable, using my act of leaving as abandonment. But Ms. Harris is a shark, and the evidence I have, the text, the police report from her meltdown, speaks for itself. It's a miserable, soul-crushing process, but every legal bill is a step closer to being free. I found out through the grapevine that she and Mark Work are no longer together. Apparently, the reality of a messy divorce wasn't as appealing as their sordid little fantasy. I can't say I was surprised. So what have I learned from all this? I've learned that love isn't enough. Trust is the foundation, and when it's gone, the whole structure collapses. I've learned that red flags are red for a reason. The guarded phone, the sudden late nights, the defensive anger. I ignored them because I wanted to believe the best of her. I wanted to believe in the story we had written together. Never again. Trust your gut. It's usually smarter than your heart. I've also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. The first few weeks, I thought this would break me. And in a way, it did. It broke the naive, trusting man I used to be. But it didn't destroy me. I'm in therapy. I'm reconnecting with friends I'd neglected. I'm rediscovering who I am without her. My advice to anyone reading this who feels that something is off in their relationship is this: don't ignore it. Don't make excuses for them. Your partner is supposed to be your safe harbor, not the storm. And if the worst happens, if you find out you've been betrayed, protect yourself. Legally, financially, and emotionally. Document everything. Talk to a lawyer. Lean on your friends. And know that you're not to blame for someone else's choices, no matter how much they try to convince you that you are. I don't know what my future looks like. The idea of dating or trusting someone again feels impossible right now. But for the first time in a long time, the future feels like it's mine to write. And that's a start. Thanks for listening, Reddit. It helped more than you know.